Hey, Good Sam, this is Pastor Jed. On Sunday, we wrapped up the Lord's Prayer series. We looked at Jesus' prayer and we were reminded that Jesus is teaching us how to pray. His disciples, when they're with Jesus, they asked Jesus, will you teach us to pray? And that's because there's such a difference between the way that Jesus was praying and the way that they were praying. I think in this series, we're reminded that there's a huge difference in the way that we naturally pray and the way that Jesus teaches us to pray. And so Jesus is reminding us that prayer is to reorient us towards God. Prayer helps us to remember who God is and what God is doing. Prayer helps us to align ourselves with God's priorities. It's interesting that when Jesus is teaching his disciples how to pray, he doesn't get out a pad and he doesn't get out a pen and he doesn't take all these prayer requests and then lift up these prayer requests to God. Instead, he reminds his disciples what God wants to do in their lives. On Sunday, we were reminded that Jesus teaches us to pray that we would be led. He says, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. What does it mean that God would lead us not into temptation? Well, we learn to put a comma, we learn to put a pause in that phrase, lead us, and then you stop, and you are reminding that God does lead us. He leads us beside still waters. He leads us into green pastures. He leads us into the way of righteousness. So God's not leading us into temptation. We do that for ourselves. Our enemy leads us into temptation. Our job is to pray that we would not allow ourselves to be led into temptation, that we would resist the devil. He reminds us that we are to resist everything that would pull us away from the heart of God. He concludes the prayer by saying, thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. It's a reminder that God's plan, God's priorities, they're going to last forever. I encouraged you, I challenged you on Sunday to continue to pray the Lord's Prayer. So while we're done with the series, we're not done with the prayer. I've been praying it every day, asking God to help me to continue to pray this prayer and, more importantly, live this prayer. On Sunday, we're beginning a new series. We're discovering what hope is and how hope defines who we are, not only in this life, but in the life yet to come. I want to remind you that Wednesday Night Live is coming up, and so it's a great opportunity for you to join the church family around the dinner table. We're going to enjoy a meal together, and then we're going to enjoy conversation together, and then we're going to enjoy doing a deep dive with the sermons. And so if you haven't signed up for Wednesday Night Live already, then I want to encourage you to do so. I'll see you Sunday as we jump into hope together. Blessings.